sauce is the key, we whipping it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up. Hey, hey, hey.
All right, welcome to another edition of The Sauce. I'm Derrick Maines, Andrew Kolikoff here. Andrew, how's it going? Did you notice my new artwork, by the way?
I did.
I usually have the Kool-Aid Man.
I did.
I'm a big Jay Pierce fan, and I have been for a long time. And Jay Pierce, ever since I've known him, he has blown up. And every time he's got pieces available now, I try to buy him because I'm like, this is a guy who's being collected by some of the top rappers in the world, some of the top athletes in the world. You know, I want to own more of the pieces. And he had this one, and I just thought, an Arizona Mario with his little mushroom.
It's like a Mario Brothers dude.
Yeah, it's Mario Brothers. It's, got the little brick there. You got the little mushroom head, but, threw a couple of, he's got his little cowboy boots on. So
I love it. Well, I got a new fake background, but I've got glasses to match them. So
there you go. I'm glad that you went out and purchased glasses to match your background.
Yeah.
Listen, we want to talk today about consulting because you and I both have been in consulting for a long time. 20 years for you. I've been almost the same amount of time. And there's a lot of tips and tricks I think that you and I have learned over the years. There's probably plenty more we still can learn. But this, we're in an environment right now where there's a lot of change and a lot of people are considering getting into consulting. I love to say about consulting, and my joke is I've been consulting for 15 years. And for a year and a half, I've been doing it really well. 13 and a half years, I just didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I didn't have the right rates and I didn't do the right work. And I was all over the place. I was like, oh, I can help with that. Well, now I don't do any of that. I'm very, very focused on the things that provide the most value. So let's chat about consulting. Today's edition, consulting. Tell us about your consulting.
Well,
what's your consulting journey been?
Since May of 2003. So that's 20 years.
Yeah.
Exactly. Almost to the date.
I'm going to look mine up and see when I started mine. So,
I would say the same thing, Derrick. I started out, I worked up the corporate ladder. I became chief science officer of a company. And I was always a wave maker. I was somebody that always had all these ideas and wanted to do different things. And they wanted to keep me pigeonholed, and I didn't like it. And I was always under somebody's thumb. And I was like, I think it was just probably at the time overconfidence that, screw it. I'm just going to do this on my own. I spoke to some people who would, hire me right away as a consultant. And I said, let me go for it. I had another driving factor. At the time, I was a single dad, newly divorced, and just getting to your job in New York City is a job. I figured out that in the time I was working for that company, I spent a year of my life on the Long Island Expressway. And I wanted to be present for my son's life. And the only way I knew how to do that was to work for myself and somehow figure it out. And we all think that, well, sure, I'll just figure it out. And I've had, in the course of those 20 years, hundreds of clients from almost every continent in the globe, from Bolivia to Mumbai, never mind just domestic clients. And I would say the same thing. I think you summed it up very well. I, at times, was all over the place. I could do different things for different people. And to this day, I still do. However, I've really narrowed it down. I think as you get older, you figure out what, two things you really need to figure out. Really, what is your true gift? What is the canvas that you paint on in life? And what makes you what's the most enjoyable at the same time, right? Once you get a certain little base of clients, you then can start choosing to accept certain types of clients or not, right? Yes. And focusing on those two things, what canvas you want to paint on and what is the most enjoyable painting you want to paint, right? And that's kind of what has steered me.
It makes so much sense. And I think very similar to me, I was an entrepreneur. I had some skills. I was able to turn those skills into, resources for clients, and be that sales or marketing or whatever that is. But over the period of time, I realized that, and some of it was mentors, right? I just did some videos about mentors that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. Some of it was Gearhart. Gearhart Kreitzer here locally has been a friend. Yeah, Kreitzer. He's been a friend for years. I've done some consulting for his consulting firm, and sitting down with him, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, and him saying, there's a reason that there's consultants that make a lot of money, and there's a reason that there's consultants that live hand to mouth. And he explained to me this idea of being very, very focused and recognizing what your gift is, recognizing what you have understanding of, not just knowledge or even wisdom, but understanding. I think all those three things are so different. I've been writing some stuff, and actually you grew up Jewish. In the Hebrew Bible, the words knowledge, wisdom, and understanding are totally different words with totally different root adverbs and verbs. And they couldn't be farther from different. And I think that's really valuable to understand. You can know something. And if you know something, you can charge $10 for that. If you have wisdom in something, you can charge $100 for that. But if you have understanding of it, you charge whatever you want, because an hour of your time of you imparting your understanding into me is worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. I have a consultant I use right now, Andrew, and I think I've talked about him before. He's $400 an hour. I don't even think he's 18 years old. But he knows he knows a social platform like nobody else, because he's got 20 million people on there that follow him. And I pay him $400 an hour to sit there and listen to him talk for an hour about what he's seeing and the trends and all sorts of stuff. And usually the last 30 minutes, I'll say, look at this on my channel. And then I'll just give him control, and then he'll just go fix everything. Right. But that $400 an hour is worth 40,000. We've been talking about this. I'm very fortunate that after finally a lot of years of social media in this last, maybe month, I think I finally figured it out. Right. I'm starting to see, dropping videos and have thousands of views right out of the gate kind of thing. And that is because I paid somebody a lot of money to show me the ropes. And you need to do the same thing. You just need to do the same thing in your business. And if you're a consultant, highest and best use is what it's all about. You have got to focus on the things that make you the most money and outsource the things that don't to other people.
You just said something that I love to hear, basically, that mentoring matters, with the right people. It accelerates learning, knowledge, wisdom, right? Like you just said. And I'm a coach, right? And one of the, and here's a story I'll share with the audience. For the 20 years, 18 of those 20 years, I never wanted to say I was a coach. Never. I never put up a shingle. It wasn't on any of my website, because I couldn't get over the personal social stigma that I had placed on coaches, because I've met so many coaches. 90% of all the coaches I've met, between you, me, and a lamppost, shouldn't be coaches.
They're as smart as a lamppost, most of them.
Yes, they should not be coaches. And I didn't even want to have anything to do to associate with those people. And there was like a stigma to me. Oh, I'm a coach. Well, everybody's a coach. Everybody's a coach. So but I realized after many, many years, that's probably the best thing that I do. I have coached executives of companies who still to this day swear to me, by me. And the only reason why I've coached them, I didn't put up a shingle. I was referred because I've done a lot of volunteer mentoring at all the incubators here in Phoenix. And apparently I was so good, people were referring business to me. And I don't know, a couple of years ago, I woke up and I was like, maybe I just need to get over my own shit. I need to get over myself and this stigma that I place on it that's getting in the way of me being a badass coach, and get over with it and just be done with it.
I can't agree with you more. I think It's funny. I posted it on LinkedIn a little bit ago, and we'll see how it goes. But I got vulnerable and did a post here today about getting therapy and the value that I have seen from getting therapy. And I have to tell you that, I post on social 4 or 5 times a day on all the platforms. And I probably sat there for 30 minutes with that one before I hit send, because sometimes the self-realization piece is like the hardest piece for people, and it's the most vulnerable piece. But that self-realization is so critically important of understanding what you are. And listen, for me, I couldn't do that, Andrew. I was saying I was doing operational consulting, and then I was meeting with other operational consultants that I was competing with. And I'm like, I don't do any of the stuff they do. Like so I created my own category, the process fixing category, where I said, I'm the number one process fixer in the world. Now, is there anybody else doing that? Maybe not, because I'm the number one. You don't want to compete with me. It's like you have to figure that out. You have to know who you are. And I think most of us don't know who we are. We're uncomfortable with ourselves. We're uncomfortable spending long amount of times with ourselves. I don't remember who it was. I don't think it was Confucius. It was a Chinese philosopher, or maybe it was even the Buddha. It might have been. It said that you should spend at least a day a week in total silence. I've never done that, but I want to try it. Like, just be self-reflective for a whole day.
I've done that, but look, the one thing I know, hey, I'm a coach, right? Is breakthrough doesn't happen from sporadic commitment. Meaning I'll try it once, or I'll try it once every other month. One of the things I always say is, how did you learn how to ride a bike? And people say, well, I had training wheels. I fell off. My dad helped me. And I say, all good answers. But the best answer is you got on it every day. If you didn't get on it, if you got on it once a month, you would have never had that breakthrough. So that, what you said to me, silence one day a week, that's a big commitment, man. But I imagine if it's something you commit to, there is some sort of breakthrough on the other side. So that's one of the things I do as a coach, is help deliver breakthrough through some commitment to at least one thing and then another thing, so that breakthrough does show up. But it happens through that consistency. But you nailed it. I mean, or maybe I was the one that brought it up.
I'll take credit for it.
Right. I had to come to terms with being who I was, which was a coach, and I didn't want to be. Even though I made money at it and I had clients at it, I never had a business card that said that I was that person, because I didn't want to be associated with it. I'll coach people, and now I do it, and people have hired me, and I'm good at it. And I coach both the business and the leader, and more servant leadership style. So I think one of the lessons learned from this discussion, which I think I want to keep still talking to Derrick about, is to really look at the things you're afraid of, or you don't like about yourself, or you don't like about other people that they do, that you think you do better, and really sit with that. Because the focus that Gerhard told you could not be more true. You've got to be focused. There was a scene, I don't know if any of our audience ever saw the movie City Slickers. And it was with Billy Crystal, right? And he was going through a midlife crisis, and he goes to this dude ranch, and Jack Palance was the cowboy that he was terrified of, right? And he finally gets to know Jack Palance, and they start talking, and they're riding the horse. And he's like, you seem so happy. You're a cowboy. My life is all twisted, and I'm confused, and I have all this stress. He said, what is the secret, of life to you? And he looks at him, and he raises his finger, and Billy Crystal says, what, your finger? And he said, no, one thing. He goes, well, what's the one thing? He goes, well, that's what you have to figure out.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, it's so true. Right? And listen, I think I love that. I've been thinking about something, and I want to try to bring it to fruition here, because I think it's so in line with what we're talking about. I'm glad that you mentioned movies, because movies give us a false impression of the world. And that is that how many times in a movie does the bad guy or does somebody learn a lesson and then they're changed because of that, right? I mean, it happens all the time in movies. It's like we learn some information and then we're affected by that and we immediately change. We change our trajectory because of that. But that is very rare in real life. It's way more like riding a bike and having to do it over and over and over and remind ourselves of that lesson. It isn't like we just automatically reprogram our brain to that idea of one thing. It's something we have to live by every day. And we have to, every time that we go to do something, we have to say, is this part of that one thing? It isn't. Should I be doing this? No, I shouldn't. And you have to ingrain that. Nobody learns. I love using the example of children with potty training. Now, I don't have kids, but I'm assuming you just, at about a year and a half, you hand them a roll of toilet paper, you show them where the restroom is, and they're good to go, right? Of course not. No, there's repetitiveness that goes along with it. But we think it's like in the movies where it's the angels sing and we're inspired and it changes us. We have to put the work in. That's what we miss in the 90-minute movie is the work that goes into that. And that,
and the pain and the suffering that's the one thing I really want to get across to our audience. There have been times where I've had no clients, where I've suffered, and you have to be willing to fight like hell to do what you were meant to do. You know, Steve Harvey, the comedian and host of what is
Family
it?
Feud, yeah.
Family Feud. There's a talk that he does where he speaks to the audience where it was before the show started, and he talks about jumping. I highly recommend our audience to watch it. It's on YouTube. Type in Steve Harvey jump. And he talks about how most people in life never jump. They make always the safe decision. They don't want to be a consultant because now I've got to figure out health insurance. I've got to figure out all these things I got to pay for rather than, matching my 401k and all that stuff. And there's a lot more stress in that. But he talks about how most people never jump because it's safe. But when you jump, he does say you're going to get scuffed up.
Yeah.
You're going to get scraped up. But your parachute will open. If you believe and you put the work in, your parachute will open. So please, everybody,
it's
watch
funny.
them.
I've really, with intent this last 6 months, try to spend a lot of time just in my own head, right? Instead of watching television or, I'm a gamer too, so I'll get the PlayStation out and do that. But just trying to sit for, 30 minutes, 15 minutes every night and just sort of think about the day and think about the lessons I've learned and try to identify the mistakes I've made. And it's incredibly valuable. It's incredibly valuable to realize that you yourself can fall into these patterns. And to your point about the jump thing, it's so many times we are our own worst enemy. I just did a video about this, and I think it dropped this morning, and it's about this idea of que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. You know what? That's totally bullshit. I'm sorry, but it's bullshit. If you are sitting around waiting for things to happen, guess what you're going to be doing tomorrow and the next day and a year from now? Sitting around. Because it's not how the world works. We were talking about this before this episode with, some of recent success with social media. And I'm starting to go viral. If anybody thinks I went viral naturally, you're crazy. No, we hired the right people. We developed the right content. We tested it over and over. We boosted posts. We paid for marketing. We did all of the things to make it go viral because we got to the point where we said, this is a really good message. Why is it not resonating? Well, it can't be me. I mean, it's good content. You said it right when we came in. You're like, some of this content you're putting out is really good. I'm getting lots of people that have been telling me that for a year. This is really good stuff. Why is it not? It can't be me. And I will tell you, I mentioned the YouTube kid, right? And I talked to him and I said, how the heck did you go viral? Is it just luck? And he's like, nobody goes viral unless you're paying to go viral. Like, are you buying ads? what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm not doing any of that stuff. He's like, well, you got zero chance. Like, it's like, you can't just put a website up there and expect that people are going to find it. Like, what are you thinking? And I don't know. Something in my head was like, I just sort of assumed that if I put content out there, that people would relate to it. And he's like, oh, you who are you talking to? Like, that's crazy talk. Well, it seems logical, right? When you don't hear from the gurus, the Gary V's of the world, when you don't hear them say, oh, by the way, it's not just putting in the hard work. You also have to have the right people and the right timing, and you have to test and you have to develop and you've got to market and you have to do all of these things. Everybody wants to show you the destination that they're at, but very few want to talk about how the hell they got there and the level of effort it took to get there. And the luck, right?
Yeah, you've got to invest in your business, which is what Derrick is saying. But I think where a lot of consultants fall short, Derrick, is they're not investing in themselves like you are. You talked about openly, which takes a lot of courage, that you've hired a therapist, right? And, I was in therapy for 6 years after my divorce, and I kept going because it made me a better person. It gave me deeper perspective of my own shit and my own habits and all that other stuff. And I find that, that constant examining, deep introspection is so helpful being a sole proprietor, a business owner, and I wish I had learned sooner, that I had the realization and the courage to say, you know what? Fuck what I think about all this. I'm a coach. Right? Yeah. Do I do customer experience and other business consulting? And I'm a speaker and an author. And I do a lot of, actually, I have a number of clients where we do outsourced business development and sales for, and I do those numbers of things. And that's kind of hard to be successful when you do those numbers of things. But I am good at those things and I do love those things. But I think the best thing is I'm a coach. And I never wanted to admit that to myself. And, if I was to do it all over again, that's what I would do. So you have to not only invest in the business that Derrick is talking about, things don't just go viral. You have to invest in it. You have to learn, spend money. But you have to, when I mean invest in yourself, I don't mean just, read a book. Spend money on your own personal growth.
Andrew, remember when you
invest?
You remember when you saw my invoice for what I pay on a monthly basis for my producers and editors and all? Remember, you were like, "Oh my God," and I'm like, "Yeah," and I have 5 of those. I mean, it's a lot of money,
right? And that's on the business side. That's on the business side. But what Derrick didn't mention to you. What Derrick didn't mention to you, and I don't know if you would have framed it this way, Derrick, is you're investing in both. You're investing in your business, but you're also investing in yourself. And I find that most consultants only do one of the two. They don't.
And I will tell you, they usually do the business, which is actually an even bigger mistake. And it's the biggest mistake that I made early on in my career, is that I was associated with businesses and I built my persona, my content, everything that I did around that business. And, you and I talked about the 5 stages of leadership early on in one of these episodes, and my opinion on that. What's the highest form? The highest form is when you become the industry expert, when you become the process fixer. Who do you call to fix process? You can call process mapping or analysis company, but will that fix it? No, that won't fix it. You call an exterminator when you need extermination services. You don't call lawn care. So that took some time. It really did. It took some time for me to truly understand what it is and who I was. And it did require an investment. And I think, unfortunately, the real secret to consulting is the long game. Because trust me, you're going to come into your consulting business and you're going to say, I need to make $150,000 a year. And you think you're going to do that in your first year. And you're just crazy. You're just not. You're just not.
Well, my story was different because I did in my first year, and then my second, and then I kind of pivoted. I had this idea for a product, and then I went back to it. and it didn't happen. And there was times where I had no clients or one, and I was struggling, but I fought like hell. I did everything I could to keep the ball rolling because I valued my freedom more than I valued anything. And I would really tell our audience before, if you are a consultant or you're thinking of becoming a consultant, actually do your mission, vision, values. Hire someone to help you gain clarity in that, because your values will be what how you really make your biggest tough decisions based off of, and that is incredibly important. Get a mentor, hire a coach, invest in yourself. I didn't know to do that in the beginning, Thank God I did wind up investing in a couple. I've had a number of mentors. I cannot stress it enough, and most people say, well, if you just work hard enough and you have passion, that's all you need. And I call the bullshit flag, because you have to have at least the 2 P's, and I call it passion and proclivity. You can't just have passion. I could decide I want to be the guard for the Phoenix Suns, and I can literally work harder than any human being that walks this planet. And guess what? I will never be the guard for the Phoenix Suns. I do not have the proclivity. So passion is not enough, Derrick.
So true. And that's why I think it's important to focus your passion, on something that you're really good at. And I am a little critical of the philosopher William McCaskill, if you're not familiar. But William McCaskill has this concept of earn to give. And the concept of it is really good. And it's that, look, if, so many of us have a passion for animals or a passion for the poor or whatever that is. And I like what William McCaskill says, and Toby Orb, who is his mentor, says something very similar. And that is that find out what you're really exceptionally good at. And if that is building a bank, right? Whatever that is, do that thing instead. And then from the excess of resources that you'll generate from that, you can make a larger impact on that, cause than you could have made going and donating your time at the shelter. But focusing on what it is that you are very unique in, and that you and only you can perform. And I think it's a great lesson for consultants to learn. Don't focus on getting too broad. Focus on targeting in on the things that are going to make you the most money, that are going to be the most value for your customer, and then create a network of people around you that can do the other things and hand those things off to them. Maybe they work for you. Maybe that's okay. Or maybe they don't. Maybe it's, we don't do sales coaching here. Let's talk to my friend Andrew. You have to figure that out, and you have to be willing to, walk away from that if you need to. And that was another thing that Gerhard, I'll give him credit, is, he was like, look, if you're winning every proposal you send out, you're doing something really wrong, because you should only win about 50% of the proposals that you send out. If you're winning more than that, that either means you're promising too much or you're charging too little. And that was a real lesson for me. I've sent a couple of proposals out this week and waiting to hear back. And I'm not counting my chickens. I'm like, half of them will come through at the rate that we charge, and half of them will say that's just too much for us. Totally fine. I'm totally good with that. Totally fine. I'm not going to discount my price to get a customer, because the level of value that we provide is 10x what we charge. And if you don't see that, then that's okay. Go do your thing.
But that's another question I get, is like, how do you price your services? Because there's coaches that charge literally dirt cheap, like $200. And then there's coaches that charge $200,000, right? That it's such a large gap. And people say, well, what do I charge? And look, it always boils down to value and how much you believe in that value that you're providing. And if you really are providing truly significant value, I will tell you, if you charge a lot and then you get one and you can deliver for the one and deliver the value, you've proved to yourself that you are at that level. And that, and then what's the normal human? Well, maybe I can charge more, right? So the one thing I will tell you is don't ever undersell your services. Try to find another way to earn income rather than just give it away. Find something else that you can get bread on the table, but don't you dare give it away, especially if you know you're really good at it. Charge the higher end. You are enough. You are worthy. As Brene Brown would say, you are that good. You just have to believe it, man. Because once you believe it, they'll believe it.
Andrew, this was a great episode, and I can't believe we already did 30 minutes, and I was hoping to summarize this in what's your top three, but we don't have the time to do it. I think people will take away from this what you'll take away from it, and if you've been in consulting for any period of time or you have a desire to get into consulting, these are some things that you really have to ask yourself. What is it that you are offering? What do you charge for that? And I don't do hourly consulting anymore. I do value-based consulting. I understand the value that we bring. And that means that, a bigger corporate, Fortune 10 company, I'm going to charge more than a Fortune 1000, and I'm going to charge more than a local company. And that is because I understand the value that I'm bringing, and I understand that value equation.
I know we're ending the episode, but you just gave a really valuable lesson. I provide value-based consulting as well. People say to me, well, what do you charge? And you charge by the hour. I'm like, hell, I don't charge by the hour. No way, right? I'm going to help you figure out the things you haven't figured out for yourself. You're going to figure it out on your own, but I'm going to be that catalyst for you and for your business. And what's that worth to you? What's it worth to you? I would say it's more than whatever hourly rate I'm going to charge you. So I think that's another lesson learned. If you have any questions based on this, you can always comment in the section below the video. You can contact Derrick or I anytime, either through our contact information provided, either through LinkedIn or direct. I'm sure this may have brought up some interesting questions you're facing as a consultant or a wannabe consultant, and just reach us.
All right. Thank you again, Andrew. It's always great chatting with you. And thank you all for tuning in to another edition of The Sauce. Make sure you subscribe, share, do all those kind of things, because they are really important to us and for us providing the content like this, right? Look at Andrew here with his heart-shaped thing. I love it, man. Thank you all for joining us on this edition of The Sauce. Until next time.
The sauce is the key, we whipping it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up.